still is, I'm sorry.
Well, how is it that he's contributed so much to American culture?
Well,
music, dance, everything you can think of.
Well, I have to be very modest about that. I would say certainly as we look at the African peoples in Nigeria, for example, I just got a wonderful invitation to go to Nigeria to be present at the installation at the Governor General Ezekwe, an old friend, who will now, and I had to cable him. I'm in Australia. I certainly would like to be with you, but I'm out here with some good folks. But I'll get to Nigeria later.
Mr. Robson, do you feel that Africa is to some extent an affinity for it, a home, or do you still feel America is essentially your home? How do you feel?
Well, let me come here. I'll come to that in just a second. But to come back to it, so I would say the Africans and the American Negroes have turned out to be an extraordinarily gifted people. The great tragedy is that by not making us full-class citizens as yet in America, they may be losing, I don't know how much yet. And to come back, I would say that unquestionably, I am an American, born there. My father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America, the primary wealth. You have to have accumulated wealth to start, you know, to build. You did it another way here in Australia. You had to build your accumulated wealth too. You just came and took it, you know what I mean? And that's what they did in most of the countries. That's what you Europeans did. You just took it. We got to catch up with you a little bit. And so in America. So there's a lot of America that belongs to me yet, you understand? But just like a Scottish American is proud of being from Scotland, I'm proud for being African. Now in our school books, they tried to tell me that all Africans were savages, till I got to London and found most of the Africans I knew were going to Oxford and Cambridge and doing very well, and learned their culture. And even once somebody had the temerity, after one had conquered the Chinese people and imposed upon them the opium trade and everything else, to suggest that they were a backward people, just the people who had been civilized so long over the rest of you folks didn't make any sense at all. So somewhere, it was wonderful to find about the colored peoples of the world that they were very advanced. So I would say today that I'm an American who is infinitely prouder to be of African descent, no question about it, no question about it. I'm an Afro-American, and I don't use the word American ever loosely again.
Now this was the feeling. This was the feeling.
That's right.
That when you were in London about 1937, 38, you really had the world at your feet. Then I mean, you're a tremendous success. You were recognised all over the world, and yet you went back to America. This was the feeling that took you back?
I felt I had to go back to my people. That's right. The going was tough, and today I can go back. I just had my passport renewed. I could go back to pretty tough times now. But any time I could get a telegram next week that the Negro people had gathered somewhere in one of their conferences, as they could, and say, Paul, in the difficulties that are going on in America, would you come back and help us? I would take the plane as soon as I finished my engagements.
Welcome to the Michael Brooks Show. We're broadcasting live from Brooklyn, USA, where left is best, as it is everywhere else, with substitute super producer Brendan Finn.
Howdy, folks.
Chief economist David Griscom recovered from an incredible beating that we're going to play later.
How's it going? I'm doing all right.
You doing all right? You no cracked ribs or anything? You doing all right, buddy?
I'm doing some stretches.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Super producer David Slavic roaming the TMBS, ever-growing, ever-aggressive TMBS Digitosphere and TMBS world. On this week's program, Trevor Beaulieu. He is the co-host of Champagne Sharks, incredibly smart guy, friend of show. We're talking about Azealia Banks's Get Out weekend with Elon Musk, and what is the deal with Ben Shapiro and the right-wing meltdown around AOC, plus Lear Cohen, Dame Dash, culture, capital, hip-hop, and religion. We've got a shout-out for another very exciting woman on her way to Congress, another member of the DSA, a gulag that will weirdly warm everybody's hearts. Sort of some incredible queen scumbaggery at work. We've got, of course, warnings on the global financial system in the Economic Minute with Griscom. And tomorrow, key moment in the struggle against the coup in Brazil. as the Workers' Party petitions for Lula da Silva, who still remains the leading presidential candidate and who has been a political prisoner since the spring, to be on the ballot. All that and much, much more on this week's Michael Brooks Show. Let's get it. You can take it down, Brendan. Of course, DJ Danarchy, the genius musical impresario behind the TMBS interstitial experience. This past weekend in Washington, D.C., the far right, white nationalists, they had a failure. They were totally outmaneuvered, outclassed, outorganized, and out-humanitied, of course, by counter-protesters in that city who turned their attempts to replicate the horrors of last year in Charlottesville, Virginia, with a protest that actually turned into something much more analogous or much more in reality, a protesting of the Trump administration's white supremacy, racism, savagery, inhumanity, and cruelty. And a lot of those people who are the harbingers of modern racism, of the 2018 version of ethnically cleansing America, whether in the policy manifestos that come out of the Republican Party or the filth that emerges from internet chat forums and seemingly everywhere else. The wine track version of those people talk about something called Western civilization. In fact, even so-called moderates are constantly talking about the unique gifts of the West. And this rhetoric usually overlaps with being things like, I don't know, classical liberals, or with commitments, often unfortunately fake commitments, to things like free speech and open societies, things that we actually do support here on this show and in a broader humane socialist project. And the reason I say so-called West is because the West, by any rigorous historical, geographic, or intellectual definition, is a fiction. And I say that because the West conceptually, from its foundations, has never been a clear thing. As an example, in antiquity and scholarship for a long time considered Greece to be a part of the East, or what was then called Asiatic, and only very recently has been absorbed inside what we call Europe. Some in Greece that were considered to be important Greek thinkers and philosophers were actually in Libya and other parts of North Africa, as but another example of this sort of geographic fluidity of the concept and the sort of disputed nature of what is and is not West. The idea of the West is used to imply that the sort of has been a fixed, static, metaphysical reality that has gone back from Greek times. But we know, even going back to the disputed nature of Greece in the beginning, to the fact that Islamic and Arabic societies were the sort of containers through which Greek philosophy was held at different points in history, as an example, Plato and Aristotle. And those ideas were transmitted and physically contained. We know that the Moors were actually a Moroccan group that stretched their influence all the way as far as Ireland, so that this concept of fixed geographic boundaries is, even in antiquity, inaccurate. In modern times, West, of course, doesn't include, and didn't include in colonial eras, colonized spaces in Latin America, as an example, which is geographically pretty far west. The United Kingdom and other great empires scoured the world and engaged in colonialism and imperialism in Africa and Asia. It stole resources, administered colonial governments, and disrupted local forms of economy and governance. However, as we know from scholars like Amartya Sen, who's probably my favorite liberal scholar, those concepts by which we are strong and profound supporters of, things like holding power accountable, open exchanges, systems of intellectual rigor and accountability across the society, can actually be found in traditions globally. There was traditions in China for public accountability, traditions in India, in African societies. There was deep sort of cooperative decision-making frameworks. In the modern era, people in Africa and Asia and Latin America respond to colonialism and imperialism often through Marxist thought, but Marxist thought that grew and transformed in local conditions and made Marxism a genuinely global tradition. Go back and listen to the conversation with Bill Fletcher Jr. on the Black Marxist tradition. So we have three core areas here. One, there's no geographic or historical continuity of the West. The West is an invented concept, and a lot of the people that people would refer to as the sort of founders of the West were, in fact, Libyan, as an example, and Greece was not in Europe conceptually until rather recently. Then we have a global expansion of imperialism and colonialism where countries in this periphery, literally in the economic periphery, as we've designed our modern world, are subsumed into Western systems and assigned as other, outside of the bounds of history, progress, democracy, science, and accountability. And that was a political project that lives on today through global extraction of resources, Western corporations, World Bank and IMF, and trade agreements that are written to not favor poorer and vulnerable nations. And three, concepts like accountability, like need to intervene in history to promote democracy, human welfare, and overthrow every type of shackle, whether it be economic or religious, is something that either can be found in traditions traditionally, broadly speaking, with regards to power accountability and public discourse, and specifically in the battles against colonialism and imperialism, systems of thought like Marxism, which people might lazily call Western, were indeed made actual global traditions with Cuban, Vietnamese, South African, and various other variations. The West is a fictitious concept. It's a way of making the world neat, clean, and orderly in a way that doesn't reflect reality, but does give a wine track version of the types of simple categorizations and efforts at supremacy that we are fighting against every step of the way. So whether we are overcoming some jackasses that come to DC and need to be made fools of, or people who do open exchange of ideas, bullshit YouTube videos, question the very concept of the West, because history, geography, and global philosophy don't care about your bigoted fantasy life. Guys, jump in here. Griscom, you're chomping at the bit on this one. Recovered from the injuries. I keep teasing this. I was shocked when I watched this video we're going to play later.
We'll have to save that.
Brutal. It's going to happen right before your economic update, buddy.
I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy that very much.
They are.
My family and loved ones, not so much.
Aww. Aww.
But you know, the concept of the West is one that is pretty funny, because when you start to ask people about which nations are included in the West, and you really start to push them, and they start talking about countries like Australia or South Africa,
right?
You start to become very clear by what they mean by a Western tradition,
right?
which is a white tradition. And you know,
right.
I would just add that, especially with this idea in philosophy, it's something that's always really funny when people start talking about Western philosophy, looking at the interventions that places outside of Europe had into like what would be quote unquote Western philosophy. To think that someone in England reading, well, actually even better, think about somebody in Detroit, Michigan reading Hegel, right, has some kind of more like claim to this history of philosophy than somebody in Algeria is pretty hilarious. And
right.
This idea of a kind of uniform Western tradition. I mean, we can talk about Western tradition as, you know, Beethoven or I don't know, problematic Wagner, right, something like that. But then
you're
it's
a big
also
Wagner fan. Griscom really likes Wagner.
Yeah, we'd be careful with that one. But
loves it.
But you know, but it's
Loves
also
it.
KFC and like reality television shows, and it's just like the continuity between these concepts is so vast that to try to like package them into this nice kind of very, you know, academic veneer that a lot of people do when they talk about Western culture, Western cultural values, which are under attack, is bullshit. And then just like as a final point, you look at things like when people like the most liberal, the most progressive people, when they talk about Western values, they're meaning like liberal capitalist democracy.
Right.
Well, let's look at one of the most Western European nations, Spain. which throughout the last 100 years was basically run under military dictatorship.
Right.
While a nation like Japan had an actual democracy, or South Korea had a democracy.
Yeah, they've transitioned into
those are kind of traditions. It's
particularly South Korea, pretty robust democracy.
And after
strong
of
civil
course,
society.
to be fair, after of course breaking through a horrible military dictatorship as well.
Right.
But to try to make
with
this
the
kind of
backing of the United States.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Exactly. So try to making this continuous claim about Western tradition, Western values, Western culture is really erroneous in the first place. So we should be careful about it because it not only it implies a unity, but it implies a fairly dangerous unity of white supremacy, of colonialism and imperialism. Which, at least for me, whenever I use that tradition, Western tradition, that's typically is more what I'm drawing from when I'm talking about in a critical way, talking about the Western tradition.
Substitute super producer Brendan Finn. He's a scholar. He's a very well-read gentleman. He has a thought on many things, usually which he whispers Svengali-like in the background, but he's on mic today on TMBS. Brendan, your thoughts?
Folks, I'm just going to start this off by saying that I am no Matt Leck.
Oh, stop it.
No Leckian insights from me. But I do recall, and I don't want to sidetrack this, so just kill it whenever you want, but I recall Angela Nagel actually pointing out that, like, while we do have to take these Western chauvinists at task and say, like, oh, you guys are basically just dog whistling for white supremacy or something to that extent, racial superiority, there is a series of events that are going to happen where Western cultures are, kind of in, like, going away. And, like, they will be outnumbered. We will become a global community. And the question then becomes, like, how do we remember these histories, these people that aren't going to be here anymore? And the fact of the matter is Western cultures are very bad at maintaining others, cultures or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
So let's see what we can do for ourselves.
I also think that one of the reasons it's so important, I'll just say really briefly, Amartya Sen wrote a book called The Argumentative Indian, and he took to task two arguments in it. One was this thing called the Asian values argument in the 1990s, which were governments like in Singapore and Malaysia, and they would say, look, we cane people and we beat the shit out of you for spitting because we're Confucian. It's our value system. And they made that argument, right? And then there was, definitely the 90s were like the kind of, halcyon age of Clinton and Thomas Friedman, and the really, like, the West figured it out first, but everybody just wants to eat McDonald's and invest in blue chip companies, and that's sort of like the end of history. And what Amartya Sen came along, he said, look, obviously things like specific forms of parliamentary democracy or, specific ways of doing things were definitely like products of 17th, 18th century Europe. But more broadly speaking, the notion that you couldn't find global roots on all continents and in all traditions of ideas of holding power accountable, different types of group decision making. I mean, he even went into like various forms of like early Buddhist communities in India and how there was like relatively democratic decision making after the death of the Buddha. And his point was not to say like it was all the same or that some of it wasn't even necessarily like applicable in the modern age, but to say that, like, look, both of these viewpoints are really wrong, because one viewpoint is saying that, like, it's fixed and static, and somebody in Singapore, because it's their culture, right? Like they don't want to be able to speak out against government corruption because it harms social cohesion. And then in the West, or in European United States, like, oh yeah, everybody really totally wants to catch up with how we do things, versus just this notion that every human being really does, there is an instinct for freedom, for having accountability. And this also, to me, linked up with Bill Fletcher Jr.'s conversation on Black Marxist tradition and the idea of, like, these, revolutionary figures in places like Africa saying, like, we have to return to history. We've been robbed out of history by things like imperialism and colonialism. And also at this time already, we're not talking about westernization. We're already talking about globalization in the positive sense, which is just ideas and traditions and people cross-pollinating and generating things that make more sense.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's just one more thing to add is that, think about that the Paul Robeson video that we watched for our cold open,
which set the stage.
For this conversation. When he says,
that's how we do, motherfucker.
when he says, it's like, America's my country and I built this country.
That's right.
And, that's something that's very powerful. And that's also true in the United Kingdom as well, and in France. So, like, all these nations, these kind of relationships are very deep. And they're relationships of force and they're relationships of terror. But this kind of way to talk about, these communities that are fading away now that we're all living together. I mean, like, we've been interacting with, like, so much of the world. Like, the entire West has been interacting with so much of the world for so long. To try to talk about it as, like, some moment that's passed is, absolutely wrong. And it also erases the majority of history of all of these nations.
I'm picturing, like, the IDW twerps that sometimes happen upon this show, just like, that's wrong. It's factually inaccurate. The West. Ben Shapiro, why won't Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez debate Ben Shapiro? I'm going to go masturbate around her now. That's my IDW fan voice.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
He might be a patron.
Well, if he's a patron, then he's great. Remember, there is a patrons are good rule.
Being a patron of the show means that you support the free exchange of ideas.
Yeah, that's true. There's been a handful. There's some patrons who I know disagree on any number of things, but just like the quality level.
Can't argue with that.
Can't argue with that. All right, guys, it's Lula time. And look, let me just say, I'm not drawing a direct comparison. It's a different situation, but people ask me why I talk about this so much. I think, like, I don't know. Why would you talk so much about, we'll get to that footage in just a second. Why would you talk so much about, I don't know, Nelson Mandela when he was in prison? All right. I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing before people freak out. It's definitely not, just in terms of, like, literally the amount of time and where they were coming from, and Lula having already served as president. But the reality is that this guy was put in jail during Brazil's military junta years because he was a labor union leader. He came from absolutely nothing to become president and really arguably be the best president in modern politics in terms of what he delivered for his people. And it's not just that Brazil's rightward shift has stakes for the United States. Okay, so going back to 2009, when the Honduras coup, which removed Manuel Zelaya from power, and the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton, at the very least, looked the other way on, if not, in Clinton's case, were fairly complacent with, to the fact that Bolsonaro, who is polling second to Lula, after being imprisoned on the flimsiest of evidence and being kept from speaking to the public, still leads the polls. He is the leading candidate for president in Brazil, hands down. The second to him is a guy named Bolsonaro, who has talked about the reason that Brazil has problems is because of Africans and indigenous people. He told a woman journalist that she wasn't good enough looking to rape. And his son recently took a picture with Steve Bannon and said, essentially with a caption of, like, we have the same politics. And Mattis is in Brazil right now talking about heightened military cooperation with Brazil. Brazil is a regional power in Latin America, and this story matters in and of itself, but it is globally connected to whether we keep syncing up hard right neoliberal to potentially literally fascistic regimes, or we begin reversing these things. And Lula is not only was an incredibly successful president, and not only is the case against him unbelievably questionable, he's also of those movements like the Landless Peoples Movement, the Global Union Movement, which is why he has support from everything from NUMSA in South Africa to the AFL-CIO here. So it really matters. And tomorrow, the Workers' Party is going to petition the Supreme Court, which has denied, Lula's right to habeas corpus, which has sentenced him to prison before any of his appeals have been exhausted. And he has been, as I say, sentenced in such a manner where nothing has actually been proven. This is all conjecture and part of a much broader corruption investigation, which has dug up much more serious things about things like the current president who is serving right now, talking about bribing people. The Temer government has instituted a mass austerity program, which has meant that Brazil under Lula, which eliminated hunger as an example, is tumbling right back down in UN indicators. So let's play. Yeah, we can play the footage now. But Lula, in addition, this is some footage of Lula. So the petition is tomorrow, and today in the New York Times, Lula published a column called "There's a Right-Wing Coup Underway in Brazil." And he writes, 16 years ago, Brazil was in crisis. The future was uncertain, and our dreams of developing into one of the world's most prosperous and democratic countries seemed imperiled. The idea that one day our citizens might enjoy the comfortable living standards of our peers in the Europe and Western democracy seemed to be fading away. Less than 2 decades after the dictatorship ended, some wounds from that period were still raw. He goes on to talk about getting elected in 2002 as the first labor union leader elected president in Brazil. And he says, here's some of the things that he did in his 2, and again, very moderate terms. The minimum wage was increased by 50%. Our Bolsa Familia program, which insisted impoverished families while simultaneously ensuring the children received quality education, won international renown. We proved that fighting poverty was good economic policy. And then he talks about how our progress was interrupted not through the ballot box, though Brazil has free and fair elections. Instead, President Dilma Rousseff was impeached and removed from office for an action that even her opponents admitted was not an impeachable offense. Then I, too, was sent to prison after a dubious trial on corruption and money laundering charges. My imprisonment is the latest phase of a slow-motion coup designed to permanently marginalize progressive forces in Brazil. It's intended to prevent the Workers' Party from again being elected to the presidency. And, of course, the Workers' Party has won 4 elections in a row. No right-wing forces in Brazil have actually won anything. He goes on to say the right-wing forces in Brazil have wasted no time in implementing their agenda. The deeply unpopular administration of President Michel Temer has approved a constitutional amendment that puts a 20-year cap on public spending and has enacted various changes in labor laws that will ease outsourcing and weaken workers' bargaining rights and even their right to an 8-day work week. I do not feel sorry for myself. I've been in jail before under Brazil's military dictatorship for nothing more than defending workers' rights. The dictatorship fell. The people who are abusing their power today will also fall. I don't want asked to be above the law, but the trial must be free, fair, and impartial. These right-wing forces convicted me and imprisoned me, ignoring the overwhelming evidence of my innocence and deny me habeas corpus only to try to stop me from running for the presidency. I ask for respect for democracy, and if they want to defeat me for real, do it in the elections. So that's President Lula, and we need to have solidarity with left forces in Brazil and with Lula and the landless movement and the union movement and the people trying to find justice for Marielle Franco, who was assassinated by right-wing paramilitary and gang forces connected with the police in Brazil. We need to do that. It matters in and of itself, and it has major implications for how we're synchronizing the global system. Now, we can get to the shout-out.
Hit him with the shout-out.
Hit him with the shout-out beat. Fire.
Shout out, shout out, shout out. This is crazy. Shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out. This is out of control. Shout out, shout out. That's creepy. Shout out, shout out. That's weird. Shout out, creepy. Shout out, weird. Shout out, crazy. Shout out, shout out. This is crazy. Shout out. This is out of control. Shout out. This is weird. Shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out.
For Alex Jones fans, welcome. This is probably one of the only ways you can hear him on YouTube. Ha ha! So sorry about that. You know, banning Alex Jones from YouTube, Facebook, and Apple shows the innate danger in having corporate tech monopolies control information systems in our time. And we need to claw back public control from these companies. And fuck Alex Jones. Shout out today goes to Rashida Tlaib. She is going to be taking the seat that was formerly occupied by John Conyers in Detroit. She will be the first Muslim woman elected to Congress. She's a member of DSA. She ran unequivocally on Medicare for all, increasing the minimum wage, and she still has family in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and has spoken clearly, and this is a bare minimum, but it's highly unusual in the United States, Palestinian humanity. And here she is. This is from a couple weeks ago. I really think this is important because there is obviously a massive left critique of Nancy Pelosi. In mainstream news outlets, it's still only framed as people who want to move the Democratic Party to the right who oppose her. Here is Rashida Tlaib talking about on CNN why she will not support Nancy Pelosi as Speaker for all the right reasons.
You vote for Nancy Pelosi?
Probably not.
Probably not.
That's my answer. No, probably not.
Why not?
Look, I think for me, I need someone that, again, is connected with the different levels of poverty that's going on. The fact that there are structures and barriers for working families in my district that need to be dismantled, and supporting big banks and supporting efforts that I don't think put the people first is troubling. And I need somebody that fully understands why I'm so passionate about those issues, why I'm so eager to make sure their voices are heard. And at this point, even people back here, right here at home in Detroit, in the Metro Detroit area, they don't feel like they're being heard, and I think that starts at the top with leadership.
Is she?
That's exactly right. And I think that, you know, unfortunately there was a guy, I believe, what's his name again, Brendan? Tim Ryan?
Tim Ryan.
Tim Ryan.
For the Yogi vote.
The Yogi vote. And obviously Tim Ryan and I share plenty of mindfulness and yoga proclivities, but he was talking about running as Nancy Pelosi for Democratic leader, but he was talking about it from sort of kind of like, let's get some Midwest kind of white guy energy. Now, obviously, you know, look, if a Midwest white dude was DSA and had a serious plan to break up the banks, give everybody Medicare, cool. But he was talking, and still unfortunately does talk, some shoddy, shady third way bullshit. But Nancy Pelosi, you know, clearly she's at the very least a profoundly ineffective communicator. She's beholden to corporate interest, and her understanding is at best tactical. And Rashida Tlaib, along with a serious social democratic agenda for America, Palestinian humanity, is pointing the right way on where democratic leadership needs to go. And it's super exciting that somebody like her, along with obviously Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and people that are already there, like Bernie Sanders and Barbara Lee and Ro Khanna, show that there really is some genuine light that is going to be going into Congress and already is in Congress. So shout out to her. I think, you know, Peter Beinart was interrogated and detained, apparently, flying into Israel recently. And I mean, Peter Beinart is like the quintessential liberal, moderate, but I understand, because I'm a modern liberal, that essentially apartheid is not okay. And now he is being, as a very well-known journalist and a guy who writes for Haaretz, being targeted. That shows you, I mean, again, if you need any more of just this sort of never-ending evidence about the nature of modern Israel. But in the United States, having someone like Rashida just being like, you know, even with down to the Michigan accent, it matters for, again, literally injecting the idea that Palestinians, and I guess also, frankly, Muslims, are human beings into the public, you know, discourse. I mean, obviously, I mean, I'm sure that the, you know, the conspiracy theory and the lies and the meltdowns about her are already starting in earnest.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. But I think the fundamental factor is that there is there has definitely been a shift in the debate nationally, and it's something that's really important, especially for the Palestinian struggle, because the United States is so involved that, you know, if you're a Palestinian, there is a part of you that like has to look for support eventually coming from the United States if you're to deal with this issue, because we press our thumbs so heavy on the scale to allow, you know, this apartheid state to continue its ways and of oppressing people in a really horrific way. I mean, completely in the international community, where Israel's really has effectively isolated themselves from even, you know, fairly, you know, center right wing European states can't even handle the kind of stuff that's going on in Israel.
David Cameron, the UK Prime Minister, called Gaza an open air prison.
I mean, which is
like David Cameron,
a guy who fucked a pig's head. I mean,
the guy who you want to. You should at least give a little bit more context for the fucked a pig. Was there actually a picture of him fucking a pig's head, or was that just in a book? Do you guys remember that? It was, the story was
I hope
that
I don't find out either.
Oh, I'm sure it's true. I mean, no, because it was a story that was like part of some, like, because David Cameron's family literally goes back to like Like his great granddad could have been like the sheriff of Nottingham or some shit. Like some real crazy UK stuff. And the story came out that as part of some like partying at Oxford or some like initiation for some social club, there was like a pig's head and he inserted himself in
He had to be the bloke that.
He had to be the bloke. Well, I think that they all had to be the bloke.
That's what I can't remember the stories of.
I think you guys do have computers in front of you. I like you could just basically baselessly speculate.
We'll never know.
Or as much as we criticize the big tech firms, like they do have some. It's kind of nice that there's ability to look things up. While you're looking it up, you guys can totally baselessly speculate. That's totally fine. I just actually want to know this story now because I forgot about it. Oh man. David Cameron and the pig's head.
Piggate.
Piggate. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Read. One of you guys read Piggate.
Refers to the
anecdote. I just have to say, this is the first time on this show I've ever genuinely felt like I should have done a trigger warning before content. I apologize. Okay. This is back to former UK Prime Minister David Cameron supposedly inserting himself in a dead pig's head when he was at Oxford.
As a student at Oxford University, former British Prime Minister.
Student at Oxford. You should almost go to like the Wikipedia. Okay, go ahead.
Former Prime Minister David Cameron inserted a private part of his anatomy, which is the most polite way to say fuck the pig's head.
His anatomy.
Into the mouth of a dead pig, which I guess is an important distinction. As part of an initiation ceremony for the Piers Gaveston Society, the pig's head is said to have been resting on the lap of another society member during the act.
Ew.
Yeah, I think it.
What else?
I guess it came out.
Did he release his anatomy?
Oh, eventually, I'm sure. This is a very long Wikipedia article.
Oh, that's great.
It's like there's a lot of controversy and theories behind it. I'm not really sure of the entire history, but
you sort of take on a kind of unintentional British affect when you do these stories. I like that. There's a lot of controversy.
I guess it's aspirational.
Yeah.
This might have to be an illicit history after dark.
An illicit history after dark. Welcome to a Michael Brooks show, illicit history. David Cameron. I would probably
an Adam Curtis sort of effect.
Like we live in strange times.
And then a funny thing happened.
David Cameron put his member into a pig's head. Now, students at Cambridge and Oxford have been doing this for generations in between murdering cabbie immigrants. However, something about this erotic act with a dead pig was different.
And now to Rhodesia.
And we all went along. The Oxford students put their anatomies in the pig's head and life was simple. But not anymore.
Talk about the decline of Western civilization.
Exactly.
Those are the same people that were literally inventing the concept of the fictitious idea of Western civilization so they could colonize Kenya and India were the original guys sticking their dicks in pigs' heads.
Come on, David, you cannot allow this tradition to fail.
Can't allow this tradition to fail.
That's the thing that's just so fucked up.
White
all
people
these
are
chauvinists.
trash. I am like, you got it's like.
But they did it in tails is the thing. They were wearing
They were totally.
tuxedos.
He was wearing They probably were literally wearing like tails with like cutouts. It was like inbred aristocratic, like the full Monty. Except instead of like stripping to save a coal mine, they were stripping to F dead pigs. Yeah, I mean, I hate. Look, essentialism is just a winning. Like essentialism just sucks. It's wrong. It's historically, intellectually weak. It's not going to get us where we need to go. Woke culture is trash. All of these things stipulated. And sometimes you do have to just sit back and just be like, white people are trash. Like everything from like, some fucking troglodytes at a Trump rally, be like, oh, fuck you, Trump, to like take it to the complete opposite end of the scale. It's like, oh, tonight's the night we insert ourselves in pigs. Like, what the fuck? Jesus. Those are real moments where I'm like, I'm Jewish, okay? Like, I am not on this plain white people shit. Okay, like, as far as I know, as horrific as Israel is, I've never heard, you know, when it really becomes itself is when, like, the story that, like, you know, like BB's son is gonna have to, like, put his dick in a pig's mouth, and that's when it will. Well,
that's also like
fully
sacrilege too.
That's true, but they're secular. They're the secular. They're not even like the. I don't know. Put their dick in a. I don't. You know, something that would be offensive to Muslims, like a goat's mouth or something. I don't know. I mean, if it was Hindu, it would be a lot easier. The obvious would be the cow, right?
We could build out this whole spreadsheet.
We could.
For patrons, though.
They probably literally did build out a spreadsheet at Oxford. I also remember this would be another, Boris Johnson, who's another one of these, you know, mega scumbag, you know, like real old family British Tories. There was one recording that came out where when he was a journalist, a friend of his from Oxford was essentially involved in some type of like financial shenanigans or something. And another reporter was writing about it. And the guy called Boris Johnson up to just be like, Boris, he's just horrible. Like, can we hire somebody basically to attack him or something? And Boris is just like, what are you talking about? Like, how? He goes, oh, well, nothing, no death, just some cracked ribs. He's just like, I'm truly in a horrid situation. Like, this is like a literal. And just like the Boris Johnson line is totally just like, well, if you're talking about killing him, like that's a sticky wicket. But I mean, yeah, sure. No. You know what he said? He said that when Boris Johnson's asking him like how far it's going to go, he goes. Oh, I mean, not killing anyone. Nothing more than we might get in a rugby match. I'm literally talking about hiring a guy to jump a journalist, and it's like, oh, yeah, nothing more than you get in a rugby match. That's something we have to dig up sometime. That's a great piece of sound. God. Oh my God. All right, guys. Substitute super producer Brendan, do you have the music ready?
I got some
pitch?
Heat. I got
you
some
ready?
heat.
I actually want to know. I want to see what you pick for heat. This is very interesting. I left this entirely up to your discretion. Speaking of which, obviously, Trevor Beaulieu and I in the postgame are going to be hashing out Dame Dash calling Leora Cohen a culture vulture. That's going to be a very interesting culture and capital conversation.
Got
culture,
one
capital, and race.
I got a beat from you guys, but I could pull one up of my own choosing quickly.
Well, yeah, go for it.
All right, give me 2 seconds.
All right, Brendan, go for it. You on Piggate still?
Yeah, can I just read
Yes, you can. While Brendan finds music, you absolutely can.
So the three hashtags that went trending after the story came out was the first one, which hashtag Piggate, which you could guess.
Sure.
The second one was snout rage.
Snout rage,
which is pretty good.
That's the type of thing that makes you go like, "What a magical little island Britain is."
Well, this one's gonna be the sparkle of all your dreams.
Okay, this is great.
Hammer on.
Yes. Yes.
That's the British snark I was looking for with Brexit. I mean, Great Britain was right there, man.
That's, you know what, dude? There you go.
But that's what I expected.
Do you do fake post? What was the fake post headline we came up if Sam got killed by a crazy person? What was it?
Oh, I don't remember.
No, it was something. It was something like. It was like pain in the ass taken out by pain in the ass. Yeah. You have a flair for these things, Brendan. All right. You got it?
Heat.
You got some heat?
Hold on.
All right, let's see what you pick. This is a very interesting. It's good. I don't know, I don't know if it flows for pitch. I don't recognize it.
I had to shout out fellow Jersey man, Just Blaze.
Just Blaze. I mean, I love Just Blaze. I just don't know this beat.
J Electronica.
Oh, you know what? As is so typical with Just Blaze, it's always like, I have no idea what this is, and then it drops a little bit, and I've definitely heard this.
Yeah.
All right, become a member of the Michael Brooks Show today. We continue to grow steadily, and we appreciate all of you who have helped us sustain what we're doing, grow what we're doing. We've grown, obviously, with Woke Bros, which I do at Waz. It's available exclusively for TMBS and Count the Dings patrons. There's a few tickets left if you want to see Waz and I at the Count the Dings show at the Bell House in October. Find that information on Twitter. We are still tweeting that out. When you become a patron, there is a massive amount of additional. It's really like you know, Brendan, you are a patron. Thank you, brother. You know, it's literally like 2-to-1 content you get.
It's wild, man. I gotta keep up, man.
It's a lot of riches. So obviously there's the post game, which you can call in on, and there's a lot of comedy going on in the post game. We play games, we do contests, we do sketches, but there's also a global dimension to do it. Obviously we're playing a lot of sound. There's a cultural dimension as well. The post game is kind of a different, more after hours and very audience interactive show. Then on Sundays, there are illicit histories and idea primers. We just banked one with Gene Bajlan. He's crew. We talked about Jeremy Corbyn, anti-Semitism, the Labour Party, socialism, and Zionism. There's histories of South Africa in transition with people who were there, people. Bhaskar Sunkara on the Russian Revolution. We get the best people in the game to explain the thinkers, history, people, and movements that you need to know for political literacy, movement savvy, and inside the Discord, we have an amazing, vibrant, ever-growing, ever-active community. I'm regularly in there for AMAs. Ask me anything. At 21 and above, we have regular phone calls. Next one coming up this Sunday. People call in from around the world. In the last conversation, we had a patron from Chile and one from Turkey. And we were talking about the global situation and their experiences in those countries. It's a vibrant, growing community. We appreciate all of you, and it's time to join today at patreon.com/TMBS. Patreon.com/TMBS. Also, of course, find our new YouTube channel with all sorts of short clipped segments, which helps us spread the word. We are at well over 5,000 subscribers now, which is a nice sort of out the gate for the first couple of weeks. The more views we get on that, and we're doing pretty well. Now most videos have at least over 1,000. We're going to keep ticking those up, and then, at the very least, the YouTube can become, cost neutral because it's another great way of helping to seed content and spread what we do. We need to be winning YouTube for an actual humanist, socialist, savvy as hell, savvy as fuck message. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Patreon.com/TMBS. That was a great beat selection, Brennan.
I hope you liked it.
I did. Brennan just crushing it. It's actually good to hear. We've talked about you coming in sometime on when it's just crew, and you hopping in on a post game and giving us some jewels on the mic.
I mean, hopefully that one day we'll make that happen if this soft trial goes well. Patrons say,
we'll see.
We love them.
Would it be really funny? We should trump it. Like the patrons are like, no. And then Brendan's like, yeah. And then Brendan's like, can I come back in? And I was like, you're not coming in. I hate to see that. That's, by the way, that's the best part of the Trump Omarosa call is when he said, no, not I hate to see that. He goes, I heard you're leaving. I don't love that. That's so awesome.
Totally normal thing to say.
Totally normal. It's just the guy can't even be a fucking predator scumbag properly. Like, he can't even be, like, his whole brand is I'm the massive asshole who fires everybody. And he can't even in his own personal dealings, even as a fucking racist sexist, he still doesn't even have the ball. Like, he still wants so desperately to be liked that he can't even just be like, yeah, you're out. He has to pretend that, like, his hands are... It's unbelievable. All right. Speaking of unbelievable, let's get to the gulag. And I think, actually, Brendan, you have some fresh heat for this segment as well.
It's coming right out the oven, folks.
Right out.
God.
God damn, I hope the comments are good. I hope the comments... Pray to God the comments are good.
bless me with these comments.
Bless him with these comments. I actually think every time Sam does an addition to the studio, I always think of the Dave Chappelle Black Bush thing where they go to Africa to get yellow cake. And there's just like the black dude who's like hanging out with black head of CIA. He's just like, pray to God you don't drop that yellow cake. And every time I see Sam drilling something, I'm just like, pray to God that don't fall. Pray to God that don't fall. Pray to God Sam's new little experiment doesn't injure somebody, including himself, by the way.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do this.
All right, guys. It's gulag time. You're actually telling me that this is the USSR anthem with a fat beat on it.
Yeah.
I like that. I was always wondering when Stalin was going to meet Fetty Wap. And now I have my answer. I appreciate that. Guys, sometimes these gulags are they're just beautiful. There's a guy in Queens in Ozone Park. His name is, Sam Esposito. The way this print is printed, the top is cut off, so I only have the guy's last name, and I would feel really bad. But I believe his name is Sam Esposito. If somebody could confirm that with me, that would be great. He's a landlord in Ozone Park in Queens. It is Sam Esposito. Thank you, Brendan. And according to the New York Post, he is staging a hunger strike. Now, you might ask yourself, why would a guy who is a Queens landlord be having a hunger strike? Now, theoretically, you might say to yourself, hey, this is one of a handful of New York real estate owners who aren't absolute scumbags. That might occur to you, but then you would remember this is the gulag segment, so that's probably not true. This guy's probably doing something really bad. But then you think to yourself, I mean, let's think about hunger strikes in history, Gandhi risking his body to overthrow the British Empire, and then again fasting to combat communal violence and extremism between Hindus and Muslims in a newly independent India. A struggle that would actually end in his assassination by a far-right Hindu. That's the tradition of hunger strikes. So what is Sam Esposito protesting? Well, funny you should ask. He is protesting the construction of a homeless shelter in his neighborhood. According to Esposito, and this is now from the New York Post, I don't feel lightheaded. I took my blood pressure and it's fine. Esposito said he lost 12 pounds since his hunger strike started. He and some friends were manning a table where they asked passerbys to sign a petition against the shelter. Shade from the tree and a fan made from the heat, which peaked to 93 degrees on Friday, were bearable. You know what isn't bearable? Being homeless. Esposito also set up a tent where he sleeps at night and rents a portable toilet. He plastered his 4 cars parked in front of the shelter building with anti-shelter signs. And politicians have also railed against the shelter. This is an administration that does not listen. So we have a resident going on a hunger strike, said State Senator Joseph Adabo. It's absolutely unacceptable that these individuals feel that's the only way they can gain attention on this issue. Esposito has 27 units and is not protesting to protect property values, but to ensure safety. The facility will help homeless men with mental health issues and have a facility instead of a hotel that they've been using. We're moving forward with opening this facility as soon as possible to give homeless New Yorkers the opportunity to be sheltered and closer to the communities they call home before winter approaches, Department of Homeless Services spokesman Ariana Fishman said. Esposito pled guilty in 2014 in a misdemeanor in connection with a massive Social Security fraud scam in which his father, Joseph Esposito, was one of the ringleaders. Esposito, who's been on bad terms with his dad, didn't go to jail. I've never stopped being involved with the community, Esposito, former board member said. I have no idea. Not everybody who passed Esposito on Friday agreed with his message. I think it's kind of get messed up, Yohara Corona said, as she puts the child in a stroller. I don't think that homeless people are going to bother anybody. To which Esposito said, that's part of the de Blasio fucking homeless agenda. And I, in the great fucking tradition of that fucking Bindi Durag, fucking vegetarian cocksucker Gandhi and others, will not be eating any Big Macs until they make sure they don't open up this fucking shelter. And by the way, I've lost a lot of weight. Before we sentence him to the gulag, where he can definitely continue his fast as far as I'm concerned, I want an over and under on whether or not we believe that he's actually fasting. And I'm just going to start with a flat no. He's maybe actually made some much-needed interventions to eat a bit healthier. Brendan, thoughts? Is this guy actually fasting?
I mean, we got to define what fasting is.
Well, he said he's only coffee and water.
Coffee flavored, like donuts as well, in addition to his coffee.
I'm doing a coffee cake. I'm doing
coffee flavored things.
I'm doing a fucking coffee cleanse. All right, you can turn the music off. It's great. Jesus, I love that. We read that. So no, but seriously, okay. So you're suggesting that maybe there's a coffee flavored things loophole.
There's definitely a loophole in here, which our man is exploiting. That's what he's done his entire adult life, it appears.
All right, so that's the guess from Brendan, and I like the adding of it appears. I agree. Everything is basically just an appearance. David Griscom, is this fast actually taking place?
I think, maybe it's like Ramadan. It's just like whenever the sun's up, he's eating, and he's just not eating when the sun's set anymore.
You're not fucking eating before the sun rises. This bullshit.
Italian Ramadan.
Hey, the sun's setting. Let me get some. Let me get some gabagool.
This guy, I mean,
that really opens the door for a lot of more jokes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But this guy is just really standing up in like the great American tradition of just complete assholes who show up at every town hall meeting. And like, I'm participating in democracy, but I'm just really trying to fuck over everyone in my community.
Right. Just
protect
like
my bottom line.
Just go, yeah, homeless people. Like literally, like wow. You just even it's like that's the type of thought that's actually where being like a guilty liberal is really like, that's the only, like, he's supposed to think to himself, oh no, maybe they'll mess up my units, and then he'll be like, that's kind of an asshole to think. Let me go see if there's a new Medicaid scam I could look into. Instead, this guy feels comfortable enough with himself to set up a tent and petitions. Oh my God.
That's actually why this guy's so great. Is he actually has like, so like, in politics, like, we're always trying to build political consciousness, so we're trying to make workers understand themselves as workers. Like, this guy really understands himself as like a fucking bourgeoisie, like landlord prick. Like, he has complete.
He has self-knowledge. He has self-knowledge. He knows who
else.
he is.
He's a real estate owner from Queens that's screwing over his community.
Yeah, wow.
Pretty hot time to be that right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of growth opportunity in the Queens real estate scumbag market.
There's a big hole.
Especially if your father was also a terrible person. It's a huge opportunity. Sam, can I ask you to have a daughter you'd like to have sex with? This guy's Sam Esposito, Sandra Esposito. This guy's just literally a mini Trump.
No, and no offense to the people who write for the Queen's Chronicle, but it's unclear. But he might have, before being in this disabilities fraud scam, he was a member of the cops too. It appears of the. NYPD.
He was a cop?
It seems that way.
Wow. Well, you have to double check all of that. It's like, I noticed firsthand there's a fucking officer. You know the amount of mentally distraught homeless people I had to beat to an oblivion and stick on a Peter Pan to go upstate. I'm not doing that anymore. You give him a one-way ticket to Kingston. Next week, this guy's back bandaged up from the beating I gave him. I don't know who the fuck treated him. I got out of the business. All right. Speaking of beatings, we have an economic update to get to. And if you're listening, you're going to need to watch this, guys. For a long time, we've taken the risk. Griscom has taken the risk as, a sort of guy getting his start. I've taken a risk. Essentially, it's kind of like, it is like the mafia. I'm essentially like, Griscom's in my crew. And he's a fucking wild young hothead who wants to take shots at the crown. And, frankly, I think in some ways this is the ethos of the show. It fits. You can't find it? So, but as I read after basically almost every segment every week, Richard Wolff, who in all seriousness has the Economic Update podcast, which is a great podcast, which everybody should subscribe to and listen to in addition to this, and is along with David Harvey and Slavoj Žižek, have held the flame of so many important radical and Marxist ideas. But that being said, Richard Wolff is Prof. Wolff, at Prof. Wolff on Twitter, has been extremely pissed by Griscom's little attempt to enter the communist economic update market. And he's tweeted things. Even last week, he was quoting Pulp Fiction. It was getting really disturbing. And apparently this footage, I have no idea how Griscom... First of all, I don't know how Griscom's at a bar with David Harvey. And I have no idea how he recovered from this beatdown, because it reminds me of Goodfellas. Now, if you're listening, you're just going to hear a Scorsese-style soundtrack. So you're going to need to watch this one. If you're watching, Griscom, first of all, you got to do a lot better next time. This is fucking pathetic. I don't really like this amount of weakness in the TMBS squad. But also, Harvey and Wolff.
I thought my boys had my back.
Dude, you didn't say that you were out. You're running rampant. All right, let's take a look at this. This was, frankly, just fucking mortifying to watch. Is this all set up? All right. Griscom, this is sad. I liked how Žižek looked at you at the end. He seemed like he was contemplating something bigger than you getting your ass kicked by David Harvey and Richard Wolff. So how did you recover from that? Because frankly, you looked totally bitch-made in that video, Griscom.
Well,
and next time you want to go out to some bar in Queens to mix with the big boys, you got to give us a call so you have a friggin' backup with you, because you think, like, oh, Mr. Harvey, here's my theory of relative exchange value. And he's like, oh, no, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. All waiting for the bar to shut down, Wolff to come back and beat your ass and make us look like a bunch of punks. It's embarrassing.
I thought that Queens was DSA territory, not
well, maybe it was DSA territory.
Angry Marxist territory. But, I recovered. Epsom salts will do wonders for your skin and wonders for your wounds.
That was at Adam the Animator, at Adam_Roth_CG on Twitter, amazingly was there. Unlike a lot of bad Samaritans in New York, just filmed it. Didn't try to intervene.
I thought that I was going to have the opportunity to speak at a conference. I was very excited.
I
figured
figured
to meet my idols, David Harvey and
right.
Žižek and Professor Wolff, and I thought I was in a safe space.
I would figure. Well, look,
They
and we don't do safe spaces, and I always actually thought that, like many cartel members who have been lured into hits by promises of women, that it would be you with the promise of a conference. So sad.
Pretty sad.
Very sad. Okay, Brendan, do we have now, and this is amazing, I gotta tell you, man, although you fought, it was just pathetic. You have a lot of heart doing this.
been hitting the gym though. So
you better be hitting
next
the
time
gym.
I'm ready
I
for
didn't
it.
know Wolf moved like that, and I didn't know that Harvey had that kind of upper body strength. No disrespect.
You know, I'm not a
yeah.
small guy. Yeah, I was
No,
pretty
that was
impressed.
amazing. Well, you were getting really cocky. It looked like they liquored you up. You looked like you were at the point where you had already gone from, "I would be honored," to trying to like negotiate your speaking time on the bill or something. Like you looked like you were feeling yourself. Okay, Grisham though showing a lot of heart. He's about to do another economic update, and then we're going to be back with Trevor Beaulieu from Champagne Sharks. Brendan, do we have David's music ready?
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's go.
I like it. Yeah, so with a lot
Of course,
heart,
this is BBC interstitial music. It's not David's music, but we use it. No,
with a lot of heart and fearlessness.
a lot of heart and
I'm
fearlessness. Okay.
So, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about pretty much what I've been talking about since we started this economic minute. But the pessimism has spread. Vanguard, a $5 trillion asset management firm, one of the largest in the market, they have adjusted their forecast for the next 4 years. I'm quoting from the New York Times article about this. In recent years, the company has put the probability of a recession 6 months out at close to 10%. Now Vanguard says the chances of one by late 2020 are between 30 and 40%. That's Vanguard's highest ever estimate for that time frame. So now they aren't saying that a recession will happen. They're just saying that it's much more likely than before. And we should note that Vanguard is one of the most cautious asset management firms out there in the market. But the point is that the financial class and the investor class are starting to become a little bit spooked by the fundamentals of the market, which is something that we've been talking about a lot. And the two main things that they cited were a flattening yield curve, which we talked about a few episodes back, which means that that basically it doesn't make as much sense to invest long term in the market. It makes more sense to invest short term. And that also that, international markets are going to be a little bit shaky. So, where does this really leave us is that, there's a lot of people who are spooked by a lot of the fluctuations that we've seen in the market, despite some of these numbers that are showing that, we have we have low unemployment and, strong GDP growth. A lot of people understand that the fundamentals of our economy aren't as strong as Trump would like us to believe.
What?
So one thing that I really want to talk about was like what happens when people get spooked? What happens when these kind of events occur? Well, we've seen, even though tech has really driven stock market growth for the past year, we've actually seen recently that there has been a pretty significant movement of money from the tech sector to the healthcare sector, which means a couple things. One, that the investors are betting that healthcare costs are going to continue to skyrocket and that there's going to be no solution in the near future to our absurd healthcare system. And when there's death, there's vultures. Right. And it's something that we really need to understand, that as long as there's this contradiction within the way that we fund our healthcare system, as long as it is run by profits, that there's always going to be people who are going to be looking in to swoop in to make money off of the misery and the misfortune of the many. Just talking about Vanguard again, ETF funds, exchange-traded funds tracking healthcare, took in more than $1 billion in July. So there's been a pretty significant movement into the healthcare market from these firms. So when we see that there's people getting more and more spooked from investment in the stock market in general, they're moving into other firms and making some quite frightening bets, I have to say, as somebody who engages with our, who luckily doesn't have to engage too much with our healthcare system. Right. But it's really important that we understand that this fundamental contradiction, as long as there's a profit motive within our healthcare system, there's always going to be people who are, one, trying to profit off of the debt of working people, and also trying to profit off of rising healthcare costs. Now, we understand that we do need to look at healthcare as a very important market in our economy, because we do have a population that is getting older. So it is going to become more and more lucrative, and that's why more and more folks, a lot of job growth is still coming into the healthcare sector. But until we deal with this fundamental contradiction, which is that healthcare is something that is for profit, and not only is it for profit, it is incredibly profitable, we're going to be at this kind of frightening moment where capital is always going to be sitting on our backs and threatening the health and the security of so many Americans. And when you look at other industrialized nations, it's absolutely ridiculous that we have to have these healthcare fights in the U.S. rather than being able to address the fundamental contradiction, which is private property and which is capitalism, in general. But until we do that, until we start to really address this healthcare issue, that it's something that it's going to be very open to kind of fluctuations in the market, and also privateers and people who are hoping to make profit off of human misery.
That's perfect. I have very little to add to that. Unfortunately, I would have thought that you would have learned to keep your fucking mouth shut. Next time, on site. And by the way, TMBS crew, he cried like a little bitch. Prof Wolf. So, I don't know. Yeah, we're still feeling a lot of heat on this, David. We're still feeling a lot of heat.
I'm just waiting for the fan-made video, the 300 video, where I kick Wolf into the pit.
It's going to be really awkward when he's finally on the show. I love it. I want to push it exactly to the point where it is genuinely awkward, where he's this like brilliant, kind gentleman. It's just like, what? You built a whole scenario where I said death threats to your... And then me and David Harvey Goodfellas him at a bar? What the fuck?
One quick aside on that, though. The guy who made that, what was his name? Do you remember?
I believe it was Adam Roth.
Yeah. My last job, I was working on a project that involved a lot
Adam
of
the animator.
Animation work.
Yes.
And rotoing like that is not easy.
No, it's incredibly well done.
Really hard, and that's awesome that you did that for
thank you.
TMBS.
Yeah, super funny. Exactly. Thanks, Brendan. Super funny video. Thanks, man. Yes. Definitely important to underscore. We're going to take a brief break. If we have music and a cut ready, we'll go to the logo, and we will be right back with Trevor Beaulieu. He is the host of Champagne Sharks. He's a friend of myself. He's a friend of TMBS. We're going to talk about this little prick, Ben Shapiro, I think his name is, trying to get into AOC's grill and a whole bunch of other stuff. He's hanging out with us through the post game. We'll be right back on The Michael Brooks Show. Welcome back to The Michael Brooks Show. Joining us now, it's great to have you back, is Trevor Beaulieu. He's the host. Is he up? Man? Oh, he's all set? Oh, no, don't hit the button. Sorry. Turn it over. My bad. It's just here. Can somebody just go in there and flip it under so it's pressed to mute instead of pressed to talk? It's underneath. You just click that. He should be fine now. Go ahead. Try it. No, don't touch it. Just try it.
Hey.
All right, you should be good now.
All right, cool.
Thanks, David. Trevor Beaulieu, host of Champagne Sharks. Thanks for being here, man.
How's it going, man?
It's good to have you back. It's been too long.
I know, man. It's been a while. It's been a while. Not since I've seen you, but
well, we actually have sort of. I mean, there. I don't want to come up, but I guess people know that Waz and I are buds, and Gene. There's some people. We have a friend broship that goes beyond talking about all of this stuff on podcasts and on shows.
I think that's fair to say. I'm not used to you being this close, man. I feel like...
Oh, really? Where are we usually? We usually are on opposite ends of a bar or something?
No, even here. You're usually over there, man. I
don't know. This is the news. You haven't been in since the new setup.
Nah, man.
Well, now I can see you looking at porn when you should be paying attention to our conversation.
You can almost look over my shoulder.
Yeah,
I
know.
See all the horrible stuff I'm doing.
You're just like... Two Asian girls with Trinidadian asses. Yeah, no, I think that's true. Trump is an asshole. Yep. I always did wonder about that. What would be? I remember one time I did a TV hit, and I actually asked her. I asked the anchor afterwards, and she was actually. It was something with the camera guy. But every time, actually, not just when I was talking, which actually kind of helped me a little bit during the segment, but through most of the segment, she's doing this with her hand, she's like, and I asked her after, I was like, was I, because on TV hits you talk in really tight increments, and I was like, was I going longer than I realized? She's like, no, you were great. And I was like, then what was that? And she's like, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm just communicating with the camera guy, right? But it was that's really distracting,
You should be aware of that too, I would think.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing that, and you're going to be looking at porn, and we're still going to pull off some great content. So,
if I see anything good, I'll make sure the
No,
audience knows.
Thank you. We're going to get to this Ben Shapiro AOC thing in a second, but first of all, real quick, I'm sure a lot of people who watch and listen know Champagne Sharks, but just, tell everybody again about Champagne Sharks, a little bit about what you guys talk about on that show. I love Champagne Sharks. If you like this show, it's very likely you'll like that show and vice versa, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I had to describe Champagne Sharks, I think it's basically what I always kind of wanted to see in the discussion on race and politics, but no one else was doing. So I figured, let me just do the show that I would want to hear. And it's basically, we try to see what's going on in the news, the culture, and then do a deep dive that's kind of counterintuitive, but hopefully not contrarian, not just contrarian for its own sake. So, yeah, it's been received pretty well, and even when it's not received well, it's led to some good shows. So it's...
Yeah, you guys definitely leverage off of bad Twitter reactions, but into actual interesting content.
Yeah, but I'm trying to dial that back because
right.
I'm going to burn a lot of bridges, and I'm not even anywhere yet. It's too early to burn.
Well, you're somewhere. Well, some people get it everywhere they go just by burning bridges. Well, I guess that will lead us later when we talk about Celia Banks. But
yeah, but yeah, exactly. But it's weird. People don't understand what a weird small world Brooklyn is. You run into people all the time. It's true. Very bizarre.
That is true.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? You and I, a couple weeks ago, I was on your show. We talked about Sorry to Bother You. And, that took us everywhere from, the nature of YouTube to the, Cornel West versus Ta-Nehisi Coates. There's... You facilitate conversations that are really entertaining and very pop culture literate and very sophisticated on race, and then they just sort of go... you go all over the place in a way that's very contained and smart. It's intentionally all over the place, which is exactly the kind of conversation I like. Obviously.
Yes.
So a couple weeks ago, and I'm gonna throw this to you in a second because you had a whole thread on this, and I want you to talk about your impressions of just this whole dynamic. It was about a week ago. Ben Shapiro went out to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and was like, $10,000 if we debate. I believe he actually said he would give $10,000 to her campaign, which is illegal. That's actually a campaign finance violation, which is pretty funny. To be the ultimate pedant debate tweeb, and in your offer where your subtext is what the fuck you're talking about, his offer is, how about in exchange for debating me, I engage in criminal activities, eh?
And part of the thing is Stans love talking about, that woman, I forget her name, but who said, oh, of course a bartender from Queens is going to avoid a Harvard-trained lawyer, so
right.
His Stans love bringing up that he's a Harvard-trained lawyer and a very basic campaign finance law. It's not even an obscure one. He whiffs on.
He whiffs on and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she said, I've learned to, I think it was something effective, I've learned to not, respond to men with bad intentions. And just even before she said it, I remember I was talking about it on Majority Report. I was main hosting that day, and I was like, she has literally everything better to do than give this little prick unearned media attention. And this has turned into the new frame because now, it's okay, Cortez is, she's an inspiring story. She has charisma. She's smart. She's also saying things that, frankly, don't take that charisma to be persuasive to people because they're commonsensical. Everybody needs health care. We should have a society that's radically more economically equal. These mind-blowingly obvious things that in those cases, especially those cases, are in fact beneficial to 99% of people. And so obviously there's a positive response, and the only reason we don't have those things is because we live in an oligarchy. So now they have to go to this stuff can't really work, and the way we prove this stuff can't really work is by, insulting our intelligence. And you found this thing. We're going to go to it in a second. This is a tweet which really does capture the conservative mind because it just is so...
It's so dumb.
It's so stupid on so many levels. And I'm going to read the tweet, and then I'm just going to have you take off from there and break down all your thoughts about every single part of this. But Benny Johnson, who I believe hasn't Benny Johnson, he's lost a couple of gigs over plagiarism. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes. So Benny Johnson, who's just a total hack and a total nobody, tweets out a meme. You know, I can't believe this meme is still going on, but this is the the jealous girlfriend is looking at the boyfriend who's craning his neck to stare at another girl's ass. And the way the memes work is it's always, the girlfriend is always one thing and the girl that the boy is looking at or the girl is looking at is another thing. And in this case, the old girlfriend is Karl Marx's Das Kapital, and then Ben Shapiro is looking at the new girl, which is Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. I guess the implication of this was that Ben Shapiro had a moment where he wasn't a little conservative wind-up doll or a teenage conservative, and he was a Marxist? What? Break all this shit down, man. I can't even get my head around this.
I don't know if I can break it down. I mean...
Just the whole thing, though. Everything from the bothering of her to this tweet, because you had a lot of thoughts on this, so just take over.
My first thing is, that's just such a bad Photoshop. And
Yes.
it's like, anybody can do better than that. Like that's the first thing. The head is just off the body. It's really bad. But okay, they're bringing this up. Like Benny Johnson's whole thing on the timeline leading up to this is he keeps making fun of Ocasio for not being smart. And Shapiro himself is doing something in very bad faith, which is what he's doing in bad faith is he's acting like Ocasio literally called him a catcaller. So he's saying stuff like, I don't know what counts as catcalling in Queens, but, I've never catcalled a woman in my life. It's like, no, she's not literally calling you a catcaller. Like, it's literally in the tweet what she thinks the similarities are. She's saying that it's the same entitled mindset that you as a white man are entitled to the conversation or audience or to be entertained seriously by a woman, in particular a woman of color. And she's saying that same type of the world owes me conversation, or the world owes me to be taken seriously, right, whether you're way out of my league, whether you have any reason to be talking to me, whether it's you're even interested, you have to entertain me. That's what she's saying. And of course, he's doing this pedantic thing like, I've never catcalled. That's slander. She's labeling me. She's calling me a sexual predator. It's like, oh, come on. Like, he's either stupid or he's disingenuous. But either way, there shouldn't be New York Times articles talking to him uncritically and just letting him say all these stupid talking points without any pushback. But all these people started running with it too, like, oh, she's so stupid. She's called him a catcaller. He's not a catcaller. And then what he ends up putting up is actually 100 times more stupid. Like, literally, this is the most stupid intervention in this entire debate. It is. And the arrogance, right, and this is like so many like white male conservatives just have this unearned smugness. Right. And like, I think we're all about earned smugness on TMBS. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to be smug, at least be earned. But nothing's worse than a condescending person who's actually stupider than you. And just really quick, Trevor, I just want a little musical accompaniment because you talked about leagues. And you think that Ocasio's response to Ben Shapiro might have gone something a little bit like this. I don't know if you recognize this beat. Oh, it should be good. Ready for this? This could be the dance hall response to Ben Shapiro talking is this Steven Seagal? Is this one?
No, this is not Steven Seagal.
I was hoping. I love that song.
That's when we get 5,000 patrons.
Okay. Oh, nice.
You don't know the Movado?
No, I recognize it now.
This song does something. This song can lead to some very nice wines to the young men in the audience. I will just give that or to all men in that audience. If you put this on, even if you think that you're not like me and you don't like Caribbean music, if you put this on in a party, it can lead to some extremely fun dance situations which require very little effort on your part.
Not even a party.
She will do the work.
Put it on in a dark basement, and then something will pop up.
Well, maybe not. Yeah. Oh, you mean like even if you're by yourself?
Yeah.
It'll just emerge.
A woman will just pop up.
You'll just get a fine wine.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but really, this is what Ocasio is saying to Ben Shapiro. All right. I just wanted to play that song, but I think it kind of worked.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
But like, I want to listen to the rest.
Yeah,
of it.
me
It's
too.
pretty good.
Well, post game.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like he's so smug and pleased with himself, and then that stupid avatar. It just looks like the guy dumb enough to put this up. Like you just picture him saying it, like from the avatar on the top left. Like it's such a perfectly stupid, smug avatar. That
It's like the platonic ideal.
yes, the platonic idea of the guy behind a meme this stupid who would be like smug and self-satisfied by it.
I won't subject us to it, but it looks like scrolling through his Twitter feed that he just learned how to take people's heads off and Photoshop them up. Because there's a bunch
This
of
is
them
fresh
that are
for
coming.
Benny Johnson. Well, the next step, well, unfortunately, so if he just discovered it, if his previous career is any indication, he'll get better at this when he takes the next step, which is figuring out how to steal other people's memes.
I mean, someone
And then
else
they
probably
might be
did
funny.
Yeah, someone else probably even did do this.
This
Who
even
knows?
this even has like the really annoying, pedantic, like conservative qualities in like a 8-word tweet or whatever. Circa 2018, colorized. Dude, it's a photo.
Yeah.
Why is that necessary?
It's none of it's right.
It's not even footage. It's just a photo. This
It's
whole
like-
thing is just like an abomination to meme culture.
Although I do have to say, the comedic potentialities of Ben Shapiro, street hollerer, are pretty rich.
Oh yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Hey, bitch, let me holler at you for a second.
Where's my hug, Ma?
Where's my hug, Ma? Where are you going? Where are you going? You man let you go out like that? Nah, for real. Let me holler at you for a second.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah? Oh, Hassa Diddy, bitch. You gonna let me talk to you?
I can see him like approaching a woman with a chart, like explaining why, like
Right,
you know, she should be talking to him. Like, well, statistics say with our earning potential and our genetic compatibility that we would.
Now, you may ask yourself why, if I look like a cretin from the netherworld, why I would be approaching you even though you're statistically more attractive and have at least a C cup size. Well, for the following reasons. I attend Harvard University. I'm white. I'm a member of a secret fascist organization, which when we ethnically cleanse the planet will be handy to be a part of. Or it could be or it could be orthodox. It could be like that's the hottest wig I've ever seen. God damn, you have fine elbows, bitch. Whoa!
The worst part about this too is if you look at the replies, there's so many happy guys like high-fiving each other at how stupid this is. He goes, "Wow, she's so dumb," and it's like, oh, all of you should just kill yourselves. Not saying anybody should kill themselves, but they should kill themselves.
Yeah,
But-
right.
Yeah,
Thank you. You
Yeah.
did that correctly. See, Trevor's a lawyer.
yeah, but I
You
mean,
totally should not do what you
I'm
should
saying
do.
that you should do. Yeah,
Yeah. It
And I
would
hope
be-
that you didn't notice that
It would
what
be
I
a
did,
horrible idea if you did what you should do.
but do it. And this and also, you know, what makes it very conservative how damn old it is. Like everybody's done with it, and then they just discover it.
Right.
That's so
Right.
Yeah.
These turning head memes were like the rage like 6 months ago.
Yes.
And what's amazing is like it doesn't even like
and they get it wrong. It's late and it's wrong.
It's late and wrong. And I'm not like an extremely online like there's no doubt that there's things happening on Instagram and Snapchat that like I am behind the curve on. Like, but at the same time, like if you work in the media field, like it should not like that is it's one thing to like not be ahead, and I don't really give. By the way, I think being ahead of the curve is super overrated on some things. Like people like with music, like I don't know. I'd actually like to establish that something doesn't suck first before I have like a private listening party about it. Like I don't, this like obsession with being ahead of the curve is kind of overrated. But at the same time, like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Like, you haven't seen this? You don't realize that this is already done? And again, I can't get over the implication that Ben Shapiro was once a Marxist.
Yes.
Like the whole joke hinges on Ben Shapiro being a Marxist.
Something you used to really enjoy.
Right.
Yeah, he wasn't flirting with like Marx was his wifey. Like he was.
Yeah, he wifed up Marx.
Yeah. Adam Smith is like the side piece. He's like trying to holler at Adam Smith, but he wifed up Marx.
God damn. Let me look at you.
I don't get it.
Where is Benny Johnson at now?
Daily Caller.
Oh my, of course.
Also, like, how can you like be mocking somebody for being dumb and unqualified when you have just been given like chances like no non-white, non-male person would have gotten? Like, who gets that many bites at the apple? You know, and
right.
But they think they earn everything. That's the thing. They assume everything that happens is because they earned it, even when they just stumble ass first into a fourth chance. You know, but her, of course, she has not earned anything. You know,
no.
And something that's interesting too.
She's super dumb.
And
she's a 28-year-old who pulled off one of the most significant political upsets in modern politics and speaks fluently and articulately and morally on a variety of platforms. You know, a fucking moron.
Clearly not as smart as the person who made this meme.
Right.
Or the guy.
Yeah, clearly not a guy who feels the need to put on a meme circa 2018 colorized.
Yeah, the guy who got busted for plagiarizing. Is it like multiple times or something?
I believe it was multiple
very
times.
Very smart. You know, I
As
got
far
in
as I
trouble once.
understand.
I got in trouble once. Let me not be smarter this time. Like, yeah.
Yeah, you know, the really dumb thing about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is that every single time in these interviews, she gets busted for quoting Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders, and Eugene Debs verbatim. You know, I mean, that's just the kind of dumb shit that she gets. Oh, wait, no. That's fucking Benny Johnson, who incidentally, like, the guy didn't get caught. Like, it wasn't some, like, you know, I had a great, you know, he had like a great book to write, and he was a young talent who succumbed to the pressure. He was some mediocre hack writing right-wing bullshit for like BuzzFeed and other places. Like, if you can't figure out how to jingle those sentences together without stealing, like, maybe you ought to like give the world a rest and like live with your parents.
That's a grift. That's the easiest grift. It's such an easy grift. Like, you can't even do that right. Have you guys seen Bethany Mandel's tweet?
No, Bethany Mandela. Do you want to shoot that? We could. Brendan, is there a way to find that? Maybe. Is Bethany Man? I don't know Bethany Mandel.
She's some kind of conservative columnist. Her bio on Twitter says "wife to Seth Mandel."
Oh, Seth Mandel is a far right.
Op-ed for New York Post and commentary.
Oh my God, she has a podcast called The Sethany Show, which is Seth and Bethany. Yeah, I just
kill yourself, but don't.
Don't.
But kill yourself, but don't.
She tweeted, "I'm shocked a bartender from Queens doesn't want to debate a Harvard law graduate." And what I love about that is these are the people who always act like they're for the little guy against the elites.
Right.
The elites. And they don't fucking like blue collar people at all. Like, they're dripping with contempt for them.
Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, keep going. Just
they're dripping with contempt for them, and they are as elitist or contemptuous of, you know, the uneducated and the whatever, but they'll use these whole like the elites talking points whenever it's suitable. Like, how could you even say that? And then on top of that, like, why do all of these conservatives act like she's obligated to answer him? He's not even a candidate.
I mean, well, like, look, who, if say Chris Hayes was like, you just won a Republican primary somewhere, you're obligated to debate me. These guys would all go, you're a delusional liberal, you know. I mean, but the thing, and it's funny, I mean, look, so obviously there's the hypocrisy there, but whatever. Hypocrisy's obviously way past the point of pointing out any of these people. It's just an interesting, because, like, look, Ben Shapiro's first move makes sense. He's just a media hustler like everybody else, and he's trying to get attention, so whatever, fair enough. But then when she does the obvious thing, which is, you know, blow the little prick off, then they work themselves into a lather where they like absolutely show what complete classist assholes they are, and then are like aggrieved that they don't get, you know, entitled to somebody's time. I also think that, like, look, you know, yeah, Ben Shapiro never had to work. He's a rich kid from LA. Like, all of this stuff in American life, and I know even some people who are more liberal just get really uncomfortable when you just point out, like Me, I didn't get to come and do media internships. My family was poor. Therefore, I have to do work. Somebody who was set up to do those internships because their parents could subsidize them. Like, this is reality. The woman's father died, and she worked, I believe, multiple jobs to save her family's house. And not only, like, in fact, that's laudable by anybody's standards. It's actually particularly laudable by their, like, asshole standards, whereas, like, people like us look at that and we think, actually, it's a total moral wrong that any person would be put in that position. Like, that house being lost shouldn't have even been a question. But, they tell on themselves all the time. That's their jam. That's all they do.
And you know what she did that made me really mad at her is that she put me in a position where I agree with Tom Watson, which I never ever want to do. But if you go up, she says, Tom Watson calls her a racist. And she goes, I can't even tell when people are joking anymore. Like, hey, but I think this is racially coded, and I'll say why. Because, she can't really say, hey, this Hispanic bitch doesn't want to debate this white guy.
Hey, this Hispanic bitch doesn't want to date me, say.
But,
Ben Shapiro would actually be a hell of a lot more entertaining.
I know, it would be entertaining. but it's like, if it was reversed, and she was from Harvard Law School as a Latina,
right,
and he was a white Jewish bartender, she wouldn't be saying this. She would be like, okay, she got it by affirmative action. The fact that she's a Harvard Law graduate just shows, like, look, this dummy in Harvard Law graduate, is being outclassed by this guy who probably should have gotten her spot. Like it's
right.
not really about what she says it's about. And I mean, I don't know if he's right for the wrong reasons or if he had the same type of logic I did, but I don't think it's really about. I think if it was reversed, her race and her gender would cancel out the Harvard Law graduate, and suddenly the fact that he was a bartender from Queens would become a laudable thing.
Right. Well, I was going to say they'd actually flip it. Then it would be like, why can't the highfalutin lawyer have like a down-home blue-collar convo?
I guess there's no affirmative action in debates, or something like that.
Right. Exactly. I mean, we all know that the game they're playing. And I think that is why,
Wait, I just want to add one more thing. I hate when she goes, wait.
Can people still see these tweets, by the way? You want to click back on them? Go ahead.
Wait, am I supposed to pretend someone who had an undergraduate degree they weren't using, and Ben Shapiro's not using his degree, is as good a debater as someone with a Harvard Law degree? And it's like...
Sorry, I guess I was. Carry on.
Yeah, but prove he's a good debater. Like, she's taking it as a given that he's a good debater. I've never seen him make a point that wasn't sophistry or whatever. Like,
but that's how they define good debate. That's literally like,
that's true.
Sophistry is their whole trade. I also think, like, who cares? Like, we're so past the point of debate, like, being a healthy or interesting or revelatory thing in this discourse. Like, it's a silly game.
Yeah.
That
it's rhetoric. It's rhetoric. It's games. It's tricks.
And it favors.
It's not actually governing.
No, and it's like, so what? So, like, some little nerd can create like a self-contained chessboard with his own rules and his and
traps
and build a little frame. It doesn't matter. It's utterly irrelevant. It has nothing to do with anything that's going on. It has nothing to do with the power that actually determines politics. And even in a positive sense, it has nothing to do with like the actual exercise of disagreement, dialoguing, and engagement. It's all just nonsense. And
that's the reason why he likes it. That's why he likes debates.
And that's why they like to exploit a broader culture of illiteracy and intellectual insecurity that confuses talking in a fast, obnoxious way and having decontextualized anecdotes and random stats as intellectual performance. It's not. It's more analogous to, like, a random arbitrary skill set. It's like a mean version of Rain Man, except Rain Man at least could tell numbers and help actually win at a fucking casino. I have zero, less than, none, only contempt for that mode of discourse and the scam. And by the way, the trivialization that they've convinced a whole bunch of people that, like, that is what intellectual rigor and debate is. Being an incurious, nasty nerd.
Yeah, and the people who love debates are not the people who you want to even sway on anything. Like, the people who like what he does. And there was an article in the New York Times that was really bad because it kind of uncritically let him just respond with all this intellectually dishonest stuff. And they didn't push back on any of it. And nothing in here backs up her assertion that he's a good debater based on these points. And the fact that, like, this article is its own best case for why she shouldn't debate him, because I would not want to have to pick apart all the sophistry in debating him when I have an actual serious campaign to run. Like, if anything, it would make it look very unserious to be with this buffoon who only gets legitimacy because he's a white male from Harvard Law School. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, he says things like slandering. Discussion and debate are not bad intentions. They can be.
Yeah, you're very...
They can easily be. You can have bad faith discussion all the time. Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, my God, I hate to do this, but even, like, if you look at old William F. Buckley shows, and first of all, you know, William F. Buckley was an arch reactionary, you know, segregationist. I have no, like, he should be remembered with contempt. But frankly, like, yes, he did have on people like James Baldwin and argue and articulate loathsome points, but he clearly had a format where he actually desired to elicit ideas from other people. And that's just true, and that is a qualitative difference. Ben Shapiro is a right-wing propagandist, and the most interesting thing about him and sad thing about him is the way that, you know, sophistry and reputation laundering through the intellectual dark web has conned a whole bunch of mediocre, gullible journalists at places like the New York Times to pretend that speaking fast and mouthing right-wing sentiments is intellectual rigor. It's not.
And because these people, for as supposedly liberal as New York Times is, they have more in common with him and his culture war bullshit. They love this culture war bullshit, and they hate the ideas becoming irrelevant as people are starting to move leftward and really get engaged on actual issues. And Ocasio to them is as much a threat to the so-called liberals at the New York Times, you know, as she is to these right-wingers, because they don't really want to talk about real solutions either that's going to raise their taxes. But the rest of the stuff he says here, he adds, slandering someone as a sexist catcaller without reason or evidence does demonstrate cowardice and bad intent, however. And her tweet clearly was not literally calling him a catcaller. And for him to pretend that she's actually calling him a real catcaller and defend it on a literal basis is either he's stupid or he's dishonest. Why would she debate him? Why would you want to waste time having to say, well, actually wasn't saying, like, it's stupid. It's a waste. But then, one last thing that she said.
No, keep going. Keep going. No rush.
One last thing that he said was, this is from the article. I'm going to read it verbatim. In a phone interview on Friday, Mr. Shapiro rejected that there was anything sexist about his offer, saying that he could see himself making a similar offer to an older male ideological opponent. And then he added this. I would offer Bernie Sanders $50,000 to debate. Absolutely, he said, referring to the Vermont senator. What in the world does this have to do with her being a woman? Which is very stupid because, like, you can say anything in a hypothetical. Like, you know, like, hey, you've only beat up black people in your whole career as a cop. Well, yeah, I've only beat up black people, sure, but I could see myself beating up a white person.
Hell yeah! Like, theoretically, I would beat the shit out of an innocent white person as well.
I could say that to anybody. Like, oh, you're a rampant sexual harasser of women. Well, I could see myself not sexually harassing a woman.
By the way,
or sexually harassing a man. Like,
by the way, Ocasio did once again. She did not say that he was a sexual harasser. She said he had bad intentions, and she also implied this. She.
For some reason, when this plays, I just imagine Ben Shapiro at a baseball party.
I imagine him
trying to creep up.
you see, I imagine him in a corner drinking a little oversized cup that's like bigger than his body, and looking at everybody having fun. And then I realized, here's the problem. This is why he's such a little asshole. And this is what so much of it comes down to.
But you know what else is crazy about this? On top of the fact that he brings up a hypothetical to refute her. Like, well, I could imagine myself not doing this. Even in his hypothetical,
He didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't challenge Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, exactly, he didn't. But even in his hypothetical, he offers Bernie Sanders $50,000 to her $10,000. So he basically gives her a pay gap. He's so fucking dumb. He says, well, I can see myself offering her 5 times. Why? Because he's male? Because he's white?
5 times the sexism and the campaign finance law
He's not even smart enough to say, I could see myself offering him the same deal. He's this, but no, he's a Harvard Law graduate, so he's smart. You know,
right?
We have to take it as a given that he's like. Why should she debate him? Like, but
well,
why,
these people
why
they confuse testing with intelligence. I mean, that's a bigger, big problem.
But why is the person writing this not even pushing back? This is basic shit.
Because that is how they get sucked in.
Access.
Well, it's totally access. No, and I think also Trevor's. You're right, and I think Trevor's also right that it's like that's the sweet spot of their bullshit. Like, I have been in conversations with so many people who are, they're probably, frankly, they're for what it's worth, like they're Democrats, right? But that language of like debate and discourse, and I mean, they just get hoodwinked and hustled by it every single time. And what's really amazing is that those principles in their actual forms are actually quite important. And nobody has done more to destroy their brand than these people. I mean, anytime somebody in public life talks about open exchange of ideas, you either are like, okay, that's either a crypto-Nazi or a disingenuous far-right propagandist. When in like a healthy society, you'd say, oh no, those are actually legit important values. But it's like, yes, those things are under threat by you.
Okay, the last thing I'm going to say about this article,
yes,
because he just keeps getting dumber. The article goes, and the worst thing is this article puts the actual tweet by Ocasio in it to start, so the author clearly read the tweet.
Right.
So she can like push back or say something, but the article continues. He also criticized Ms. Ocasio-Cortez's analogy of catcalling, labeling it in quote-unquote insane accusation.
Holla, holla, holla.
Now, in the sentence, she says analogy, meaning that she gets that it's not literal. She used the word analogy, but she lets him just say this. I'm an Orthodox Jew, and I have never catcalled a woman in my life, he said. So he's continuing this thing like he literally called him a catcaller. He said, I don't know how they catcall down in Queens, but it must be weird, And it's like, okay, first off, what does being an Orthodox Jew have to do with anything? Does being an Orthodox Jew render you immune to catcalling? And if it does, who racially or whatever would you have to be for it to be natural? Like, what's
Puerto Rican?
Yeah,
that's science.
I'm not from where she's from. Like he's kind of basically analogizing, her people. I'm an Orthodox Jew, unlike you. Like, none of this is pushed back on in the article. The fact that it's not, like, it doesn't say anything like, despite the fact that she was clearly using an analogy, Mr. Shapiro said such and such. It doesn't say that. And again, the Orthodox Jew thing is, this is the brilliant guy that, Mandela thinks that she should be running scared from.
I have to say, and I don't trash Orthodox Jews. I don't essentialize anybody. I'm actually pretty good about that. But just as a matter of reality, if you ask any like woman, and maybe by Orthodox he's doing a trick and excluding Hasidim, but presumably Hasidim are more Orthodox than Ben Shapiro because they're actually like, running around Williamsburg and doing their thing, not like doing trash podcasts. Some of them are very good at hollering at women on the street. Some of them are actually super skillful at catcalling, and you have not lived until you've seen some like guy named Yuri who's dressed like he's in like 18th century Poland and looks like he has like 5 cases of scoliosis, being like, "You from here? Let me talk to you." You know what I love is I would every time, because those guys every time they see a white person, they always ask, "You juice? You juice?" And I remember one time I was walking with a girl I was dating, and she was a black girl.
Yeah.
And usually when they would see you like with a girl, you know, of another race, and I've had this experience several times, they're just kind of like, and so much for the not essentializing impression here. So the guy came up to her and he's like, and he literally is like, you know, he wasn't like, he actually was nice to her, like he smiled at her. And so he was like, you know, he wasn't bad to her. He acknowledged her presence, but he turned to me and he's like, this? I was like, no, but she is. And he's just like, and then we walked off. He was confused. I felt like Trump. I turned around. I was like, Ethiopian.
Well, you know,
Ethiopian Jew.
You know what's funny? My friend works Vice. He's a cop.
Right.
He works Vice. He told me that they bust those guys all the time with like prostitutes of all different races.
Well, I mean, look, anytime you get into a community where they're super suppressed, right? It shows up. Those are like, there's literally stats. Like I've read somewhere like there's some, and obviously like everywhere in the world, like everybody's looking at a huge amount of pornography, but I think they literally like in the United States, highest pornography rates are in the most Christian conservative states, and globally, some of the highest countries are in like the Middle East, right? Like it just makes sense. Like if you're suppressed, it's gonna come out.
No, definitely.
Right. So that being said, I would speculate, and the key word here is speculate. What Ben Shapiro is really trying to say is, "Oh my God, Ma, please." See, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was not saying that, but I'm guessing that.
What brand is that shirt? Because it must say "Made in Heaven."
I like how I'm just taking it that he's like straight up grimy, but you're actually capturing the type of fucking lame shit that he actually would say.
There was another.
Did it hurt? What? When you fell from heaven?
Oh, it looks like you dropped something. It looks like conversation. Let's pick it up.
That is the ultimate Ben Shapiro hollow line.
Want to debate?
Want to debate in the sheets? Want to have a free and open exchange of bodily fluids?
I'm gonna filibuster you open.
Come on, Ma, don't filibuster.
I'm gonna filibuster nut.
All of a sudden, I was gonna say, now we're making Ben Shapiro cool.
Yeah. That's cool.
Now he can be here. This is an alternative world where he studied abroad or something.
That might be a new character.
Ben Shapiro is a halfway paid up member of the human race.
PUA Shapiro or something.
PUA, yeah. So here's the thing, guys. Yeah, it's like one of those old videos, like when all that trash was popular. He's just like, a lot of guys think they can't get girls. I'm here to tell you, I was really shy in high school. I didn't get many dates. I have banged supermodels from every single continent, including Brazilian twins. How did I do it? The 4 steps: confidence, conversation, debate, and infatuation. Okay, we're gonna go through the steps here.
Everything is debatable, even a no.
Oh, God, well, now we're getting into the real creepy.
She says no. Ask her to debate.
I have literally overpowered with logic unwilling women from across all 4. I have literally exhausted women into dates, sex, and even more.
This debate tactic called sex by attrition.
Right.
Never fails. Just debate her until she just wants you to shut up.
Now you go, now you've studied at some highfalutin liberal school. You go, wait, it sounds like you're advocating some form of sexual coercion. It's not, and I'll legally explain to you why. I went to Harvard Law School.
Oh, God.
now we literally are just talking about that whole scene. But actually, he missed his true calling.
Yeah. I can imagine like the people at the Ben Shapiro boot camp, the dredges of society.
Confidence, conversation, debate, infatuation.
I want to see that sketch.
Oh my God, that's a great sketch.
Yeah, have you ever seen Magnolia?
No.
Where
Oh, you're Tom Cruise,
is
yeah.
like the
I've never
Lothario
seen that
guy.
movie. I've never
Just
seen
having
it.
like Ben Shapiro as him instead.
Oh, that'd be
P.T.
so
Anderson,
good.
get on it.
Oh, one of the viewers has to put the head on Tom Cruise, a floating Ben Shapiro head on Tom Cruise.
And then say,
movie.
and then whatever way you meme it, just make sure to say colorized circa 2018, so we know exactly what you're talking about. You gotta. Okay, this is the scene. This is who Ben Shapiro needs to be.
How'd you guys like those nachos?
And change the pitch to make it high.
Yeah, well, you were not here
high
for the
pitch.
fucking food. You are here for me to enlighten you, to edify you, to send you off into the now not so unknown future. So come along with me.
And the graphic he
How to
exposes is so
fake
good.
Like you are nice and caring. No, I don't want a microphone. Now this is quite an important chapter, as you will see. But let's get down to brass tacks. Let's get right down to it, boys. Let's get right down to it. Men are shit. What? Men are shit. Well, isn't that what they say? Isn't that what? Because we do bad things, don't we? We do horrible.
We do horrible
heinous,
things, don't we?
Heinous.
And PTA
terrible
was way ahead of the
things,
curve on
things
this. This was
that
before the
no
PE waste
woman
actually blew up.
Wow.
would ever do.
So this is real cultural antenna
But
filmmaking
women,
here.
they don't lie. No, women don't cheat. Women don't manipulate us.
I
But you
like
see what I'm
this.
getting
He's
at.
like the Malcolm X of
Oh, yeah, you
rapey
see what I'm
white
getting
men
at.
right
See what
here.
society
This is one of
does
Tom Cruise's
for little
best
boys.
Yeah, this is terrifying.
1999.
This is 1999?
Yep.
Wow, they were reading the toxic
Now we're gonna
culture.
try to apologize. I am sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. I am so sorry. What is it that? What is it? Huh?
All right, so
Is
yes.
it their pussies? Their
Is it their
love?
pussies? Is it their
Yeah, Mama
pheromones?
wouldn't let me play soccer, and Daddy, oh, he hit me. So that's
All right.
This is very prescient. Wow.
So I was
Actually,
going to
it's
say,
way more
basically,
prescient than I remember.
this is the full description of everything that's going on.
Because-
Unfortunate right now.
Yeah, because it brought in like the PC and can't be a man shit. It's,
Yeah.
Wow, it's way more prescient than I remember.
Can't be a man.
Gonna have to revisit that.
Yeah, I'm going to need to see that. All right, guys, we have a lot to get to in the postgame, and we're going to get to the postgame in a minute. We got to talk about Azealia Banks and Elon Musk. You know how much I love my Musk dunking. We are going to get to some of this Omarosa stuff because Omarosa is thick. Let me holler at you, Ma. No, I'm just playing. And we do have to actually, and a little bit more on the show, we are going to talk about just, in some ways, I hesitate to talk about what's happening in Yemen, or hesitate's the wrong word, but I mean, we just need to keep reminding everybody as much as possible of this mass murder taking place on a daily basis by Saudi Arabia, the United States, the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates. It's grotesque. It's obscene. And we're going to touch, it's going to be very upsetting, but it's quite important. We're going to touch on that. Dame Dash, Leor Cohen, culture, capital, race, religion, a lot of stuff to get to. It's time to become a patron today. We continue to grow steadily, and 2,000 is our next goal. I also just found out very recently we're going to get a little tiny, not huge, but a little small matching hit when we reach 2,000. So it's a big deal. And obviously, patrons can call in. I'm going to get to all your Discord questions. There's a hell of a lot going on. I want to thank substitute super producer Brendan Finn, who's, of course, killing it.
Thanks for dealing with me,
it.
folks. And if you thought I did a bad job, you know, and if
Keep
you
your
like
mouth shut.
Hindenburg.
No, not you. I meant them. Like, don't say people are doing a bad job. No, whoa. I've never been that mean to anybody in my squad on air ever.
Don't isolate that, folks.
Yeah, please. No, you're doing a great job, man. And I hope you come back in to hang out with us more. Dave Griscom, chief economist, super producer. What? Did I mess your name? You
Try that again.
Try it again. No, I'm not. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Couldn't even rep with Harvey and Wolf. It's pathetic. David Griscom, chief economist. Davey Grizzy. David Griscom. chief economist, super producer David Slavic, the returning super producer Matt Leck, of course, next week. Trevor Beaulieu, he's the host of Champagne Sharks, friend of show, friend of me. Thanks for being here. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks to everybody in the TMBS community. It's time to join now. We'll see you all at patreon.com/TMBS and in the postgame.